Hey everyone, welcome back to Muñeco's Life. So, my name is Mercedes, and I'm the one in charge of this channel. And today I just want to talk about, today I just want to explain kind of the channel, and as many of you know, the death of our first dog. But y'all don't know what happened or anything like that. So today I will be explaining that. So like 9 years ago, we bought a dog, our first ever dog. His name was Muñeco, and I remember at the beginning, I was so scared of him. I was around 7 years old, and I was terrified. Like, my parents were close to getting rid of him because of how scared I was of him. But I eventually allowed him to get close to me, and we eventually became best friends. Like, I loved him. He meant the world to me. Then around June, he passed away June 22nd around like 5 or 6 a.m. So I remember on June 14th, my grandma had come into town for the weekend, and she was just gonna be here. She was staying for one weekend. And that night, when it was my grandma and my aunt coming into town, that night when they came to our house, we noticed that he wasn't very happy. Like, he was excited, but at the same time his energies were very low, which was not normal, because usually when someone came to visit, or he would get very excited and be jumping around and stuff. And that night we noticed that his energy was very low, but he was still eating, he was still drinking water, everything was pretty normal, except that his energy was very low. So we thought he was maybe just tired or something. He was late. It was like 12 or 1. So we just let him be that night. Then I remember the next day, his energies were very, very low during the entire day. I remember he didn't eat, and which was a shocker for us because he loved to eat. One of his favorite things to do was eat, and I remember he didn't eat anything at all. Like, not even fruit, which he loved, not even his treats, which he also loved. So that was a bit weird for us. And then there was a lot of people here, so we thought maybe he was just overwhelmed. But then I remember we tried to touch him, grab him, and we touched around his neck area, and he cried. And that was we were confused because we were what? So I remember that day we just kind of let him alone for a bit to see if he would eat. So we just kind of left food on his plate, and then we all kind of left. And then when we came back, we noticed that he had eaten, so that was a good sign. But his energy was so low, he didn't want to interact with anyone, which wasn't something normal for him. Then that Sunday, we were gonna take him to the vet because he didn't eat, he didn't drink water, he was very weak. So we took him to the vet, and then we took him to one, but they said he had to stay the night there without even checking him. So we're like, no, we're not gonna leave him here, because they didn't check him and they wanted to keep him the night. Then we found a different vet, and then they were like, we thought it was an ear infection. So we told them, oh, we think it's an ear infection. So they were like, oh, okay, it's an ear infection. So we're just gonna wash his ears out, and that should make it better. They were like, we're just gonna clean his ears and he should be fine. We bought like a medicine thing for his ears to clean them out. So we're like, okay. And they were like, come back in 2 weeks so we could check him up and see the progress. We're like, okay. So that day we just kind of let him be. The whole family was over. And that day we took him to the vet. We're like, okay, he'll get better. Then the Monday after, when everyone left, he was exposed again. That's when we noticed that he could barely walk. He hadn't eaten a thing. So we were like, and then I remember that night, my mom touched him and she felt a lump on his neck. There was like a lump. So we were like, that's really weird. So then, we were like, we'll just let him be tonight and see what happens. Then the next day, we noticed that he had 2 lumps on his neck, and then he didn't eat, he didn't drink, he could barely walk. So we rushed him to a different vet. And there, they checked him. They gave him medicine. They searched for any like bites to see if it was like an infection or something had bitten him. But nothing. So the vet, they gave us medicine for the inflammation because he was really inflamed from down there. It was like really, really bad. And it just kept getting worse, and he wasn't eating at all, and he couldn't really walk anymore. So that was hard. So we just kind of went back home. And that day, I remember we tried giving him medicine, but that didn't work. So we just kind of gave him water and just kind of stayed like that. And we managed to give him medicine eventually. So we're like, okay, we'll just see how he is tomorrow. And then that Wednesday, from Wednesday to Saturday, which was when we had to put him to sleep, it just went downhill very quickly. It was very hard. That Wednesday, when we woke up and saw him, his entire face was inflamed. One of his eyes was shut because the inflammation was so big on his face that from one eye he couldn't see anymore because it was completely closed. It's because of the inflammation. So we called to the vet, and she was like, you just came in yesterday, just wait till tomorrow and see how he does. Just give the medicine time. We're like, okay. I remember that day we were determined to like feeding him because he hadn't eaten anything at all. We bought a little syringe to feed him to the mouth. We bought some canned dog food, some like wet food. We blended that so it would be like kind of like just liquid, so he would just swallow it. And I remember he ate that. He was very happy to eat again because it had been a while since he had last eaten. We gave him some food, some water, so like he was sick, so he could stay hydrated. Because very important. And I remember that night he just threw up. Like, everything just out that night. I remember here. And I remember that night I got so scared because he threw up and he fainted. I was like, what do I do now? Like, I just panicked. And I remember I just called my dad and he picked him up, and then he was okay. He was just weak because he had nothing in his system. And then the next day we talked to someone, and then she was like, I know a really good vet. It's like a mobile vet. So we took him there that Thursday. And I remember the vet guy saw him and he was, I think he even got sad because by then my dog's entire face was swollen. Both of his eyes were shut. He could no longer see. He could barely walk on his own. He wouldn't eat. So he looked at him and he was like, I'm gonna put a shot on him. I'm gonna put a vaccine on him for inflammation, and if it doesn't get better, take him to his usual vet. So we're like, okay. And I remember that day we were in the car. It was just me, my mom, and my dog. We were in the parking lot after the vet, and I remember he started to wag his tail. And like, we got really happy because we hadn't seen him do that in a week. So we were like, oh, the medicine probably really worked on him, and we thought, oh, he's gonna get better. But now we think, and we're like, maybe that was his goodbye to us. We came back home. We laid him on the couch so he'd be comfortable. We were always keeping an eye on him. He was never alone because he couldn't walk, so we wanted to make sure that someone was always with him in case he needed to like use a bathroom or something. He was laying on the couch that Thursday and he just wagged his tail. He kept doing it. We were really, really happy because we thought it was progress. So we just stayed with him all day Thursday. Then the next day, Friday, it was a hard day. He didn't have the energies to even walk anymore. I remember he couldn't even get up anymore. He tried and he fell over. That was really hard to see because it's like, what do you mean? And that Thursday, his favorite meal was chicken and rice. My mom would like cook for him because he didn't eat dog food anymore. It had been like a year since he had dog food. So my mom would always make him chicken and rice and like homemade foods. And I remember that Friday, we made him some chicken and rice, blended it so he could like just swallow it easy. And I remember he enjoyed that so much. And he also had some coconut water because someone told us that coconut water was really good to like keep dogs hydrated. So we gave him a little bit of that and he absolutely loved that. He was very happy. So that Friday night, we got back home from church, and it was that moment where I realized that he wasn't gonna make it. I remember we just prayed. That Friday night, like, my heart told me he'll get better, but I knew he wasn't. I knew it was time to let go, but I didn't want to accept it, so I was just like, no. I remember I cried a lot during that week. It was very hard. he was my buddy of 9 years. I didn't know what else to expect. I couldn't imagine my world without him. So that night, I went to sleep around 1, and that night, my brother stayed up with him to just make sure he was okay. And like, I think around 5 a.m. or 4 a.m., I'm not sure, my mom woke me up. And when she woke me up, all I could hear was my dog crying, and I was like, so that moment when I woke up, I was like, it's time. So we got ready, we went to the vet, and when we were there, he fainted, and I was like, this is it. But then he turned out to be fine. While we were there, they put him on medicine so he wouldn't be on pain, and then they explained us the procedures that we could take. And one thing they told us is it could have been cancer, but it was too late now. So putting him through treatment would have been way too painful for us and way too painful for him to go through. Many surgeries were necessary, and she was like, there's no way of knowing if it'll actually work. She's like, 80% of the time it's just gonna bring us back to where we are right now. So she told us that the best thing to do was to let him go. And it was hard hearing that. But we knew it was the best for him. I remember the first thing they were gonna do to him if we put him through treatment was cut his face open to take any liquids out. And then the second thing was gonna be removing a piece of his jaw. So we were like, we're not putting him through that. So that morning, we made a decision to just let him go. We looked at him and he was tired. So yeah, that's what happened. So now, we talked to a different vet afterwards, and he told us it was probably a tumor in his head. And in the first vet we took him to, the wash, the ear cleaning they did probably woke it up or something. And that caused all the inflammation and swelling in his face and head. I gotta say, losing a pet, one of the worst pains ever. It's hard. Harder than I ever thought it'd be, but here we are, 6 months later, just doing our best. As y'all can see, I still have all his stuff right here. Here's his bed and all his toys. I still have them with me because he was very special to me. I remember grief is a really hard thing to go through. Losing a pet is like, I don't know, it's weird. I remember walking out of there, it felt so unreal. I was like, what do I do now? Like, I got home and it was quiet, and I was just like, now what? What's next? It feels like something's missing, because there is something missing, and it feels like you can't breathe. And I gotta say, if you're experiencing the same pain, I gotta say the easiest way to heal is by getting a new pet that's gonna bring you joy and comfort. I remember saying that I didn't want another dog because he wasn't gonna replace my original. My new dog doesn't replace the original. They're very different. Even I gotta say, I've seen a lot of similarities between the two. And at the beginning, it was kind of weird. But I gotta say, the easiest way to heal is by getting a new pet. As hard as it is, it's worth it.